Hello, my name is Andrea. I have been at Netflix for about 5 years in a variety of roles, almost all of them centering around alleviating pain points of some sort. And so today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what my current team does to help bridge the gap or turn data teams into better engineers. Wrong way? All right, so I thought I'd set the stage by explaining a little bit about how we're organized at Netflix. So I'm not sure what you're seeing, so I'm gonna say on your left, you see our data platform organization. This is where these distributed systems engineers and software engineers who own and maintain our data transformation, data transportation, cloud data storage, our notebooks infrastructure, query portals, business intelligence tools like Tableau. All of that data infrastructure is owned and maintained by our data platform team. And then on the right, you see our data and insights org. Now, one thing to note is it's more than just our data insights org that uses the data platform, right? This data platform is powering data for our product, powering data for our studio. All kinds of engineers are leveraging the platform. But on the right is our data and insights org. And so in that organization, we have data engineers, analytics engineers, visualization engineers, data scientists. And I tried to sort of kind of give a vague idea of the skills in each of those job families. It's broad generalizations, of course, and I'm leaving out machine learning engineers and our scientists, but they have a dedicated platform at Netflix called our machine learning platform. So you see that star there, that's my team. We are not data scientists, we're not data engineers, not analytics engineers, we're software engineers. And it's a small team of about 8, and we support this 400-person data and insights org, and we have one job, to enable them, right? We bridge the gap between the data platform and the data and insights organization, because their job is to deliver insights and analytics to the business, dashboards, reports, data pipelines. That's what we want them to focus on. We're a software engineering team that we help them be better engineers, that's what we'll say. But we build tools, we design frameworks, we even provide hands-on consultation. Overall, the goal is for us to help them leverage the platform, okay? So as the leader of that team, I have these 3 guiding principles for how I lead this team. 1, we make it easy to do the right thing. We don't ask teams what they want. We take the time to really understand what they do, and we meet those teams where they are. These may sound really like soft skills, soft principles for an enablement team that's trying to encourage people to use the infrastructure in the right way. But you have to remember this is Netflix, and if you know anything about Netflix culture, or if you don't, let me just say freedom and responsibility is one of our most valuable corporate values. And so you can't really make people do things. We're a no rules kind of place, no process. We love our freedom. We accept our responsibility. But I found that these principles kind of endure us to our customers while also getting us what we want. So I'm going to describe a little bit I'm going to walk you through some examples where I'll demonstrate how we abide by those principles, but also achieve that goal at the same time of making the data practitioners better engineers. Okay, so here's an image from a classic American film, Field of Dreams. If you don't know the film, no problem. There's a very famous quote. It says, if you build it, they will come. I'm here to say it's more complicated than that. In fact, great engineering tools won't actually make data teams better engineers, okay? Remember that. I'm gonna come back to that. So let me tell you a story about how workflow orchestration and management evolved at Netflix. 10 years ago, we were using UC4, now known as Atomic. It was great. Back then, a very standardized application management system, fully managed, very nice user interface, point and click, set up your jobs, run them, everything managed, great. As Netflix evolved, we needed that tool to evolve, and we actually built Mason from the ground up internally it allowed us to do orchestration like what you see at the bottom there, right? Incorporating data from various parts of the data platform infrastructure, Hive, Spark jobs, R models and R, bringing them all together, deploying in Docker containers. It was very customizable, a nice Scala DSL, fully extensible, great UI for monitoring. This was a great engineering tool. And today we have the second generation of Meson, which we call Maestro, even more scalable for the size and scale of Netflix data as it's grown, even more DSLs, Java, Python, et cetera, better features for signaling and triggering jobs, great engineering tools. The software engineers and other parts of the engineering org, the software engineers and the product org, they loved it. It was great, but it wasn't actually helping our data teams go from like data projects to data products. In fact, it created the Wild Wild West, right? Our data practitioners started writing lots of code that lived all over the place and deploying things from any place imaginable. And it just became really hard for the data platform to debug pipelines when they went wrong. Even data teams themselves were having a hard time collaborating and maintaining the jobs that they were writing. Data practitioners even started getting nervous deploying things because they just weren't sure how it was going to affect downstream things. They weren't sure what this change to this Python egg when they deployed it was going to do to the rest of the pipeline. It was a mess. And so my team, that's where we step in, right? We're saying, we have a great engineering tool. Our data teams are not leveraging it correctly. What are we going to do about that? So we started to think about the DevOps cycle. This is not new, right? This is not a new concept, but data teams rarely utilize the DevOps cycle. And we could have forced it, not really, not at Netflix, you can't force anything. But instead we built tools to make it easy for them to do the right thing. Remember that guiding principle. We wanted them to be able to deliver data products in a quick, safe, and repeatable manner. And so we developed this tool, Dataflow. This is Netflix Dataflow, not to be confused with any other Dataflow product that might be out there. I'm sure there are a ton of naming collisions. Bad name, great product. It's an in-house tool. And what Dataflow provided was, it's a CLI. It provided automated code repo setup, automated CI/CD, unit tests, branch-driven deployment, even sample workflows, just templates for them. We released Dataflow at Netflix early this year. Today we have over 300 monthly active users, 50 daily active users, over 300 Bitbucket repos across Netflix are managed by Dataflow configurations. And this was a prime example of how an engineering tool didn't necessarily make the data engineers better, but we were able to bridge that gap by making it easy for them to do the right thing. And here's just an example of what a simple Dataflow command could do for you, right? With a simple Dataflow sample workflow, a Spark SQL workflow, we give them a directory that gives you a SQL file, some unit tests that they can modify, but we handle how that is deployed upon PR commit, right? They don't have to worry about all that setup. They just have to modify the logic to fit their SQL transformation. We even give them backfill jobs. They don't have to use any of it. But with that command, we really nudge them to do it, right? And so Dataflow is being widely adopted across our organization. And actually the platform loves it too, right? There's some simple config that they can point to when people come and say, hey, my Spark job failed, right? The engineering teams really can manage this a lot better when the jobs are being managed in Dataflow. Okay. So again, great engineering tools won't necessarily make data teams better engineers. I'm going to give you another example. So in the analytics and visualization engineering space, we were hearing lots of pain points. I need an easier way to manage and deploy analytic web apps. Now, the people I'm talking about live in the middle of this spectrum. So they're a little more sophisticated than the Tableau and Superset users, right? The point and click dashboard developers. They don't have the JavaScript and the CSS to build their own React and Flask apps. They kind of work in R, they work in Python, they build our Shiny apps, Plotly dashboards, Streamlit apps. But then they want to deploy them so that their stakeholders can interact with them. And they were really feeling a lot of pain around that. So if we actually just listened to what they wanted, we would have given them a great engineering tool. We would have given them Spinnaker. How many of you have heard of Spinnaker? You? Spinnaker is probably one of our most successful open source tools to come out of Netflix. It's used at companies all across the country. It's used ubiquitously at Netflix. And I pulled this right off the Spinnaker website. Spinnaker provides application management and deployment to help you release software changes with high velocity and confidence. A fantastic tool. Huge, long feature list. But when we dove deeper to actually see what the data professionals were doing, they weren't using it at all. They just were not using Spinnaker. What they were doing was they were hosting these web apps on their virtual machines and then sending the URLs to their stakeholders. This is bad, all bad, right? We had no authentication for the users who were accessing the apps and thus the data, right? It's very risky. We had no reliability. It's on virtual machines, go down anytime, and it's costly. At one point, we counted 100 apps across VMs that were just sitting there. And this is like, I mean, Netflix today, alarms will go off, but Netflix a couple years ago, it was okay. But it's costly. So here's a direct quote from a Netflix data scientist. I'm open to learning the DevOps skills required to manage a Spinnaker app, but not currently having that skill set was a blocker for me to deploy the apps I was looking to spin up. Okay. This is where one of our guiding principles came in. We heard the pain, we saw what they were doing, so we met them where they were. We could have said, all right, let's spin up a curriculum to upskill people on Spinnaker, teach them how to open up the right ports in the firewall and configure Nginx. We could have done that, but do you want your data scientists doing that? Like, is that the best use of their time or the resources that you have? For us, the answer was no. And I had a former RStudio developer on my team who said, there's Posit Connect for this, formerly RStudio Connect. And for the cost of $65K a year, we were able to like host all of those apps that were being hosted on the virtual machines through Posit Connect. And so Posit Connect is a platform for deploying web apps in Plotly, in Streamlit, and our Shiny. And my team, the software engineers who understand how to do all of that, we maintain the instance on Spinnaker, and we allow the users to just deploy through their RStudio IDE plugin or through a Python package in the environment that they love working in. This is a huge win for us. The benefits far outweigh the costs, right? Now we mitigate security risks. We route all the traffic through our internal application gateway. We save the data practitioners time. We reduce costs. And if the web app goes down, it's because the Posit Connect server went down, and that's on us, right? And I feel more confident in us waking up in the middle of the night than I do the data scientist, right? And so here's a quote from the exact same data scientist who said, hey, with Posit Connect, I'm able to focus my time on the analysis and the dashboard design without getting bogged down in the DevOps. And that's what we want. We want them to focus on their expertise, but we also want all of the engineering best practices. So I have a small team. Remember, 8 people supporting a 400-person organization. And so I had to be very strategic about how I staff this team. I have very senior software engineers. They have deep data experience, but they're also highly empathetic, very patient. We have no expectations for engineering skills, honestly. We're highly collaborative. We sit with people. We see what they're trying to do. We are highly collaborative with the platform teams. We understand their roadmaps, and we try to bring them together. And they're solutions-oriented. And I know that's like a really vague term. Everybody uses it on their resume. But what I mean is, like, we just try to solve the problem. Posit Connect wasn't an engineering project. We didn't build anything. We didn't design anything. We just said, what's the easiest thing to accomplish the goal? And we went and bought a license, right? So I have these very skilled engineers who are humble enough to just want to solve problems and enable people. It's an enablement team at the end of the day. So you might be saying, how do you know that this team is doing a good job and that it's useful? I mean, mostly it's feedback that we hear, but we do see a steady increase in the adoption of our tools. We get positive feedback from new users, and I think that's really important. That new hires to Netflix, they just come in doing the right thing because we've given them the tools to do the right thing. And then we see an improved quality and robustness of data products that can be traced back to our efforts. And again, like I mentioned before, we're seeing really effective collaborations with the platform. Migrations have been able to be managed solely by the platform because there were code repos managed by Dataflow. And they could hook into Dataflow and do what they needed to do. They could test, they could observe, and it's just been a win all the way around. So you might be thinking, well, that's Netflix. You have a 400-person data org. That's not where I work. But again, we've only allocated about 2% of our headcount in that data org to enabling our data practitioners. And so if you take anything away from this talk, I would say it's worth it. So 2% for you might be one person, but I think that that's worth not forcing data product developers to be software engineers. Invest in the tooling and the people that can help them on that unique data development path. That's number one takeaway. Number two, you cannot be a successful enablement team without an empathy, right? If all we wanted to do was point people to documentation for great engineering tools, we would not be successful. We have to have like a real empathy for what the data teams are trying to do in order to find the right solutions for them. And then number three, bake in best practices whenever possible. We could say, hey, it's a best practice to write unit tests for your data pipelines, but there is a lot of friction in doing that. And so we tried to bake it into Dataflow so that they had the smallest, easiest lift to making it happen. Data audits we bake in as well. We just ask them to put in the logic. I mean, reduce the friction as much as possible if you really want people to follow best practices, especially at a place like Netflix when mandates are not an option. And I think a lot of startups operate like that as well, so that might be relevant to you. I think that's all I have. So thank you for listening, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Excellent information and definitely lots of learnings for me. I want to start with my own curiosity. Is your team, how do you discover features or how do you discover problems? Like, do you work with product managers or is it something you have to do?
Oh, yeah. We scour the support Slack channels. And I mean, that's one of the ways, right? We really, because we sit in the data org, we're kind of biased towards the data org. And so when we see data folks going into engineering help Slack channels, and we hear the answers that they're getting, we're just like, oh my gosh, no, you can't tell them to do that, you know? And so we're always getting opportunities like that. But now that we've kind of established, again, this team has been around for only about 3 years, I want to say, maybe 3 or 4 years. Now that we've established a great reputation for enabling, people start coming to us like, man, I really wish I had this kind of tool or I had this kind of feature. So that's developed over time as well.
Got it. All right, let's start with the Slido questions. Folks, feel free to keep adding questions using the QR code. So first question, what's the career path of these enablement engineers?
A lot of them are like disgruntled data engineers, or, you know, they're just like, oh my gosh, you know, things just don't fit me. I'm so tired of this. Or they've also are software engineers who dabble in data, but a lot of them have built little side tools, right? And just really wanted to productionize them for the enterprise. So I hire internally quite a bit as I'm growing my team, because they have a lot of context. And I think for these enablement teams, having context is super key.
Yeah, totally. I was actually going to ask as well, how do you hire? But you just answered my question as well. All right. Next question. How to weigh options on migration from one tech stack to another and still support current use cases addressed by the tool replaced? Let me read that again.
Yeah,
Options on migration from one tech
another.
stack to another.
Still support use cases addressed by the tool being replaced. That's a good question. I think we've actually experienced that before, and so I guess I'm going to try to frame it in like as a super empathetic team. We try to be empathetic to the fact that like, hey, this tool was really good for what I used to do. I really enjoyed it, and so for us, we really do think about digging deep into the functionality. Like, what is it that they liked about it? Did they like the UI? Then what can we do to give them the UI? Usually a migration is happening because the tool is better.
Yeah.
So if people are really trying to stay on the old tool, it's because there's something there that they really like. And so we really try to dig into that to figure out how we can give them that experience in the new tool.
And I imagine there has to be like a period of education when transitioning to a new tech.
Oh yeah, we try to make the migrations as transparent as possible. We really don't want people to have to feel migrations, right? So especially for data professionals, they don't care about the tools. They're really trying to get their data products out, right? And so as much as we can do under the covers, we try to do.
I see. So you try to avoid having them to swap like significant pieces of their workflow.
Absolutely. Yeah, we try to manage migrations for people as much as possible. And we actually just went through one recently where we managed the entire thing. And so one key part of that for us was just sending PRs, right? Like, I don't want you to have to do anything. I'm going to do it, send a PR, you check it out, and then merge it. Right?
So do the work for them.
Do the work for them.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's just easier that way.
Yeah. I feel you. All right. Next question. Has Netflix observed any changes in the mindset or attitudes of their data teams towards software engineering best practices since implementing them?
Yes, I meant to make this point. So with data flow, we started to get PRs to data flow from data engineers, right? So they're like, yeah, this is great, but I actually have this deployment strategy on our team that works really well for us. Like, can I get data flow to do that? Right. And so they're starting to think about how they want to work in the dev cycle, and they're submitting. That was like, I don't know. I sent a memo to the whole. I was just so excited to see that start to happen, because we put it in front of them. They started to see the benefits of it, and then they started to like collaborate with us on it. So yes.
So like
absolutely.
You gave them the toys and they started playing.
They started playing, and they saw the benefit. I mean, that's
the biggest.
That's the biggest thing, right?
That's
they
the
saw the benefit of it.
Yeah. Very nice. Next question. How do you keep a protective eye on all of the things that data practitioners are building?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so a discovery question.
Yeah, so this is a good one, because this is actually an issue. And when I first started leading this team, I used to just say, like, bring us all of the things that you have. Like, we just want to centrally manage all of the little tools that people are building in their little silos. And that started to get way out of hand. And so what we try to do now is socialize what we have more so that people know what's out there and just stop doing that. They just stop building things. And we are a little more judicious about what we bring in. So I think there was a talk going on here, like you build it, you run it, or you own it, or something like that. We started to be a little more serious about that as well. So it is hard to keep an eye on everything that they're building, but we found that socializing what we already have to prevent duplication or to get more collaboration works. And then also like putting the ownership burden on people when they build it, it started to work to like sort of quell that a little bit.
And as a follow-up, what are some ways you do this socialization and evangelizing?
Newsletters, newsletters, memos. We try to get our customers to give talks about their data products, and then like kind of give us a nod every time they do it. You know, like, hey, I built this with Posit Connect. You know, oh, data flow helped us prevent a disaster.
10
right?
out of 10.
That kind of stuff helps.
Would recommend.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
Awesome. We have one more question. Guys, add more questions. Now that you have data customers coming to you with feature requests, have you encountered requests that go against the standards you're trying to hold? Did you say no to people?
Yes. I mean, we are opinionated, right? As empathetic as we try to be, we're very opinionated about engineering best practices. And so we will say, like, that's bad. Right? I know you want to do it that way, but that is not good for a variety of reasons. Freedom and responsibility, of course, but we won't take that on because it goes against all of these principles, right? And so I must say we are quite opinionated in how we do things. We say we provide guardrails, but not gates.
Gates, yeah, I was gonna say.
But we do have an opinion about best practices, and we try to stick to those.
But do people come and ask for it?
They come and
They care.
ask, absolutely. They come and ask, and they may go implement it somewhere else, but we just refuse to take that kind of stuff on.
Got it. All right, this is the last question, but I do have one more question from me.
Oh, sure.
So what was the biggest challenge you've faced while leading this team? Whether it's people challenge or process challenge or technology challenge?
Maybe in this bridging the gap, the lines can get blurry, right? Data platforms or platforms in general like to think that they, provide an easy to use platform for people. And so I think the hardest challenge was having really direct conversations with them about how they weren't meeting the needs. And they don't move as fast as we can sometimes. So like, although they would want to do it, like, oh, we heard that pain point. It's on our roadmap for 2025, right? They just can't do it. And so I think those conversations as an engineering leader are difficult to manage. And I think that would be true for any sort of like local central team, right? That managing the relationship with the larger infrastructure teams can be nuanced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you feel like you have enough partnership with the various functions and enough resources?
Yeah, I do. Trust has been huge for us. And we've even graduated things back to the infrastructure teams. That's always a sign of goodwill. We're not just trying to like build a little fiefdom or anything like that. We're trying to enable people. And if it gets big enough and the adoption gets large enough, we move it back. We provide requirements back to the infrastructure team. And so we built up a lot of trust with the engineering partners that have helped us be successful.
Yeah, because one of the things that I've heard from like data practitioners is they feel like sometimes data is an afterthought.
Yes, yeah.
And so
Yeah.
how do you deal with that? Like, how do you improve that?
Well, I mean, that's how we've endeared ourselves to the data organization. For us, data is not an afterthought. Like, they are our first customer, right? Like I told you, the data platform, right? They have the product teams and the studio and all of that. But for the data organization, they're our first customer,
Yeah.
and they feel like they have a place to go. That's why
They
I'm saying...
feel taken care of.
Yeah, they feel taken care of. That's why I'm saying I think it's worth the investment for anyone, no matter what size the company is, to just have like engineering resources dedicated to data. It goes a long way.
Got it. All right. Well, that was my last question.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
All
And
right.
I'll see you
Thanks.
at the next talk. Thank you so much,
All right,
Andrea.
no problem.